We are here with the great Michael Franzese.
Michael Franzese is a real-life former Mafia boss.
Miami Beach movie producer Michael Franzese is behind bars tonight. The reputed mobster was sentenced by a federal judge in Brooklyn today to 10 years in prison. Franzese is also ordered to pay nearly $15 million in fines, forfeiture, and restitution for his conviction on racketeering and tax conspiracy.
Authorities describe Franzese as a young, rich, and dangerous mafia boss.
Like I said, the FBI can allege and say whatever they like. They've been doing it for many, many years.
Not a man who pledged himself to the mafia, devising a scheme that brought the family hundreds of millions of dollars.
You were making 6 to 8 mil a week.
You still have just bags of cash buried places that like no one's ever gonna know, you're not gonna ever touch, but just like...
That's for me to know and other people to find out, right?
One of the biggest money earners the mob had seen since Al Capone.
I was very active in that life. It's attractive to young people. The boss of your family has the power of life and death over you. Boss says you're gone, you're gone.
JFK, a lot of talk of the mafia being behind that.
My entire life, from the right people, have told me this was facilitated by our people. Mob hit. I've heard it from my dad, I've heard it from people in power.
Had my father never introduced me to that life, I would have never gone down the criminal path. That's not who I was.
The lifestyle is evil. Any lifestyle that does that to a family is a bad life.
I read you spent 3 years in solitary. Is that true?
29 months.
Straight?
Yeah. Sometimes a window, sometimes not.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Mislaibeled. We are here in Los Angeles. Wow, we are working very, very hard. I'm extremely honored to be sitting with our guest today. We're gonna get them in 1 second. If you're watching this, if you can please like, subscribe, and comment. We are here with most definitely what will be the coolest guest I believe I'll ever sit with, for sure to date. We're here with the great Michael Franzese. For those of you that don't know anything about the New York City Mafia, mob life, or as they call it, the life, you're about to learn a whole lot about that, and you're sitting with the person I think who made the most money ever in the New York, for sure in the New York Mafia and the Colombo family. Is that accurate?
Well, that's what they say.
That's what they say.
I don't like to admit to that, but that's what they say.
Okay, so there's a lot of different questions, but as I mentioned, if you could like, subscribe, and comment would mean the world. Okay, so my first question that I had, I was actually talking about this with Shmuley yesterday, one of the last few days that we were discussing this. And I was like, what type of house did you grow up in? Obviously, this started with your dad, right? Your dad's name was John, if I'm not mistaken?
John Sonny.
Sonny, right?
Everybody knew him as Sonny. Yeah.
First of all, how did that come about, that it was Sonny?
My grandmother used to call him Sonny, and it stuck.
It just
that
stuck.
was it, yeah.
All right, there you go. So my first question is like, what type of house did he grow up in? Obviously, your father was involved heavily in a life of crime, the mafia. Were you guys in like a traditional like home? Like obviously now you're not in the life. I'm walking into this house. You know, Michael, by the way, thank you so much for allowing us into your home. Wow, and to your wife and all your kids. And your
grandkid.
And your grandkid.
My grandson, yes.
We moved this play date upstairs.
Correct.
And I'm very honored by that. But did the house look exactly like this?
No. No, we grew up in Brooklyn. My grandfather settled in the Greenpoint, Williamsburg section of Brooklyn. And the houses were kind of, railroad, brownstone type of houses, one right next to each other, and, 3 stories if I remember. And so it was a pretty modest house, back then.
I was referring more to like the calmness and like just the very family
orientation of it.
Like if I walked in, would I have known your father was involved in the mafia, or I would have no idea?
Well, it was anything but calm, because my dad was one of 19 kids.
Wow.
And every one of his brothers and sisters, and he himself, had at least 7. So it was a huge family.
You were outdoing the Jewish people. We can't even get...
It was huge. And my grandparents, my grandfather especially, who was the ruler, he wanted us all together all the time. So we were always around each other.
The 19 were from one marriage?
Yeah.
One woman?
One woman.
That's
crazy.
Unreal. My aunts said they don't know their mother without her being pregnant.
I can imagine. This literally sounds
sounds right out of Williamsburg.
An Orthodox home specifically. Wow, it's unreal.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Shmuley, go ahead.
But in terms of the household, the traditional like aspect we're trying to get to is when you walked into the house, right? Like I grew up in Ohio, suburban life. Like when you walked into the house, it was just a normal dinner table, normal life. Was it always chaos happening? Was there like, I would say not just cash sitting around, but different things that just, when you walk into the house, it's like, this is not a normal house. Someone in here is just some sort of human being that's part of something that's not natural to society.
No, you wouldn't have known that, growing up. My grandfather was a stern ruler, I would say, but not in the sense of ruler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody respected him well. It was just real family. You walk into our house, you're sitting down, food's going to be on the table. Everybody was running around because there were so many of us. But you wouldn't have noticed any mafia or anything like
really?
that. No.
So my question is obviously not how you got involved in the mafia. That's pretty obvious because your father was in it. But how did your father land up, in the life?
My grandfather was a very well-respected guy, and he had a bakery business in Greenpoint. And he also had like a club there, and a lot of guys from the life would hang out there. They'd come and visit him, and they respected him a lot. But my dad he was an amateur boxer. He got around those people, and the life seemed attractive to him, and he got involved against my grandfather's wishes.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, my grandfather didn't want him to get involved. He said, your life is not your own when you get involved in that. But my dad, made his own decision. His other 3 brothers did not get involved. So he was the only one.
Did your dad ever regret, obviously your dad went to prison, sat for, 50 years?
He got a 50-year sentence, and he did 40 on the 50. Yeah.
It's unreal. And he never, ever caved, right? Never. That's
caved.
Unreal.
Yeah.
He was in. Like, that's some sort of level of conviction. It's unreal.
He was a true old-timer, and he stood by his oath.
Yeah. Did he ever have any regrets about obviously spending a large portion of his life in prison? Or he's like, this is how it goes?
No, he had regrets. I mean, obviously our family was destroyed as a result of all the prison time he did and all the turbulence around us all the time. He had regrets. He expressed them. But my dad was also, very proud of the fact that he never caved. He never went by way of the government. So that was him, and there's probably somebody at the door.
That's okay.
Yeah. They drop packages. We get packages here every day. Amazon.
That's because you have kids. I mean, they're just. I always say the swipe one, the
one swipe
buy,
on the bottom of the
buy
Amazon
now,
thing.
The greatest invention of all time.
Let me say, Jeff Bezos has to love my family. No question. Every day, package a day. There's more than that. But
yeah. So I've watched a nice amount of your stuff. Obviously, you mentioned a whole bunch of times that your father was against you also, right? Going into the life.
Well, he didn't want that for me originally. He wanted me to get an education. He wanted me to be a doctor. But when he got in trouble, it was a bad case. My dad was framed in that case. He was 50 years old when he went in. If I didn't help him out, figure add 50 on top of that, he would die in prison. So, we both saw the life as a way for me to get some influence on the street, to help him get lawyers, to help him find the witnesses that testified against him, to get them to recant their testimony because they all lied. And so I could do that better on the street than I can as a doctor. And that's basically how it happened.
All right.
It's so funny because literally our next question that we had is that we saw that you were pre-med, and being part of the mafia, being part of the life, obviously requires an absolute, just a devastating amount of business acumen. And so like we were looking, I'm like, how does Michael Franzese become pre-med or go for pre-med? And
why are you going for
why?
For business school? Like
when your business seems like that's the family, like business, finance, being able to understand accounting, like things of that nature.
Well, listen, it's kind of on the job training, but not everybody in that life knows how to use the life to benefit them in business. You have kind of 2 divisions. You have the racketeers, which are the guys that are bringing the money into the family. And then you have the gangsters, the guys that do the work, most of the work. I mean, every racketeer has to do the work also, but the gangsters do it more. The guys that are bringing in the money, they want the money. There's no organization that lasts without money. No organization is built without money. So you got to have money coming in. So, I just knew how to use that life. I had a head for business. I was very entrepreneurial. I worked very hard. I was a 7-day-a-week guy. I was very aggressive on the street. So I just got fortunate,
No, so I think what he's asking is that why did you land up in why did you ever want to become a doctor? Like you're obviously most known for your business acumen.
I think I wanted to be a doctor more for my mother and father because they really wanted that for me, and I had interest in it. I mean, I like biology, and if I would have went into the practice, it would have been pediatrics because I like kids. I had a heart for kids. But they wanted it more than me, quite honestly.
What did they want specifically for you to be a doctor? Like what
first person in the family to become a professional. I heard that from my dad quite often, you know. So he just, something that he thought would be terrific, and that's what he wanted.
Got it.
Honestly,
You guys have some similarities.
Yeah. Honestly, it sounds very like, we were just talking about this before the pod, right? That Italians and Jews, we seem to have a very like common, there's a family orientation around it. There's also like wanting something for your kids that you never had before in a certain way. And it's like, yeah, like becoming a doctor. It's like the joke about Jews, like everyone's a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or they went to school. And so you're saying it's like a similar idea.
Yeah, you want a Jewish doctor and a Jewish lawyer. You don't want anybody, absolutely. We said that
Were your
all the
attorneys
time.
Jewish?
Absolutely. Every one of
Really?
them. Yeah, John Jacobs, Murray Edelbaum, yeah. All
Murray Edelbaum, wow.
That guy's Jewish. I can tell you that right now. He had a circumcision. I could swear to you.
Yeah, we went with Jewish lawyers and Jewish doctors, for sure.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Was your dad like when you decided like, all right? First of all, was your decision ultimately to enter the life because of the fact your dad went to prison? Like, if your dad didn't go, you would have stuck with the medical school route, or was just your dad went to prison now you had to provide?
No, he would have kept me on track in college. I probably would have been a doctor.
Really?
I had the grades. I mean, I was okay there, and I had the interest, you know, to a degree. So I would have saw it through. But you know, it just wasn't in the cards when he went to prison. And Joe Colombo, who was the boss of our family, he kind of took me under his wing. I was very active in the Italian American Civil Rights League. You guys are, you know, a little too young to remember that, but I saw it as a way to help my dad out of prison. I started to meet a lot of my dad's friends, and I was highly influenced by that. And I said, I got to help him out. And then, you know, there's this big fallacy out there that, you know, mob guys go to jail and the family takes care of the family. That's not true. My dad had some money on the street and various things, but after 2 years or so, it ran out. And we had to fend for ourselves at that point.
Really?
Yeah, so I was the oldest, and I had to take care of my mothers and my mother and my other younger brothers and sisters. So I had to earn.
Could you speak to the people here that don't know much about the life, just the basic structure, obviously, of the New York City Mafia? There's 5 families, right?
5 families in New York, yeah.
What are the 5? You obviously have Colombo. That was where...
Lucchese, Gambino, Bonanno, Colombo you got, and Genovese.
And which one, was there one that was most powerful of the 5?
In numbers-wise, okay, made members, numbers-wise, both the Gambino and the Genovese were the biggest families.
How many people were made members?
Approximately 250, 225 to 250 made guys that actually took the oath, comprised each one of those families. So between the two of them, they had close to 500 members.
And the Colombo family?
115 during my time.
So that's not a very, I mean, you guys obviously, that's not like a huge number. You guys
were
controlling
the size of the operation.
But also, you guys are controlling a tremendous amount of bandwidth in New York City. And the influence is significant, considering the fact that it sounds like there's not more than 1,000 made men between all 5 families, right?
True.
Roughly.
I mean, we had a lot of associates, guys that weren't made, that were around us, did business with us, whatever. But you know, there was, I think, 750 made guys at that time.
Really?
Yeah, during my era.
And were all the families, were any of the families like kind of allies, you know, and against other families? Or was, I know at different times...
No, we were all allies. You know, whenever there was warring, but whenever there was a war in a family, it was a civil war, and it was a war for power. Families didn't fight with one another. That ended when Lucchese, when Luciano, back in the 40s, when he created the mob commission. There was no more fighting among each other at that point in time. Things were settled amicably. So basically, we were all allies.
Right.
We worked together.
Right. No, it's unreal to me though how much like influence. I never knew the number of you know made men that there were. So your dad, you then are hanging around your dad's family. When you enter into the life and start hanging around before you take the oath, do you have their respect immediately because you're your dad's son, and it's like, all right, here's Sonny's son, like. We're going to respect like off the bat, or you have to earn that like you were like a regular guy there?
You got to earn it. There's no question about that. I mean, look, I had brothers that, you know, went in a different direction. You got to earn it. My father did get a little bit more deference because, first of all, there's a lot of nepotism in that life. Right. A lot of guys bring their sons and their, you know, their nephews and so on and so forth. And that's basically for security reasons because you know that, you know, they're family. They're not going to go against you. At least that's what you think. But because my father was in the situation that he was in, you know, needed to get out of prison, needed help, I got pushed ahead You know, during the time that I got made in the early 70s, there was an expression that the books were closed. They weren't bringing any new guys into the family since the 50s.
Right.
And that was, again, security reasons. The only time they can bring a guy in is if somebody died. They were able to replace them in that family. In the mid-70s, they opened the books, and they started bringing in a lot of guys. So when I got made, there was guys waiting 20 years.
What was the reason that in the 70s they decided to open the books?
They just decided, hey, we got to build up the ranks, you know, and they wanted to do that. So I got pushed up front because it was an act to really be able to help my father, because I was the only one that he had. My dad was the underboss. He did have a lot of respect at that time, so they did him that courtesy. But I still had to earn it. You know, it took me 2.5 years, and I had to earn it. I had to prove myself. And once that happened, you know, they moved me to the front.
Was there a defining moment when you earned it, like that your peers, like you say it took 2.5 years, was there like a defining thing that happened that made you earn that?
It's cumulative, you know, you have to do everything you're told to do without question. And, you know, that's what I did for 2.5 years. I was a recruit. And the first day, you know, when I got the lecture, they said, hey, be here tomorrow morning, wear a suit, and you're on call 24/7. And so that's it. And I was on call 24/7.
And it's real 24/7, I assume.
Yeah.
It's like you'll get a call 3:45 in the morning, like business.
You can get a call at any point in time, and you can never be late. If you're told to be someplace, traffic doesn't matter, accidents don't matter, you got the flu, don't matter. You're told to be someplace, you're there. And you're never late. Can't be late.
Really? It's like the punctuality of it is...
If you had a meeting at 8, you better be there at 7:30.
Well, was the transition going from school to that life and that punctuality and all that stuff, did you learn that as a kid? Like, did you have to be at the like dinner table a certain time, different things? Like, did that come easy to you, or is that something that was like, I need to buckle down right now and I just have to force myself to learn how to be punctual?
No, I mean, we had discipline in our house, and we had respect. You know, I say this all the time. If any smarts that I might have had, I got from my dad. But my toughness came from my mother. She was very strict. She didn't spare the rod with me at all. I was the oldest, and you know, she taught me how to be tough. My mother was a rough one, very, very independent, very tough. But yeah, I mean, we had to be disciplined in the house. We had rules, and we had to follow them, and that was it.
All right, everybody, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, CUBX. CUBX is an IT company that personally does my own IT. I've recommended these guys to multiple of my friends. They have come back with nothing but rave reviews. These guys have fantastic, fantastic customer service. There are no hold times. You call, you get through, they fix your problem immediately, and they are truly a group of talented IT professionals. They service specifically companies of 5 employees or more. They have a special division for companies with 500 employees or more, and a additional division specifically dedicated to the healthcare field, which is an area that they particularly specialize in. If you'd like to get through to them, you can reach them at 732-444-8771. Press 2 to get through to the sales department. You can also email them at hello@cubx.com. That's hello@cubx.com. You can also check them up online at cubx.com. Again, that's cubx.com. If you're a new company that's starting out and need a great IT team, definitely reach out to these guys. Or if you're an existing company that is currently not happy with your existing IT firm, I would highly, highly recommend this group. Thank you so much, guys. Back to the episode. So how many underbosses are there?
One.
There's one.
Per family.
So it was Joe,
My
your dad.
Yeah.
And then whatever.
Boss, underboss, and then you have a consigliere.
Real like...
Consigliere, the advisor to the family. And then you got all the caporegimes or captains. And then you have the soldiers.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So during this time that you're growing up, we're going to get into the actual time in the Mafia. When you're at school, does everyone know? Is it like word on the street that Sonny Franzese is part of the Mafia and you're Sonny's son? Like, are you sitting in class and people understand that?
Well, I understand. My dad was kind of the John Gotti of his day in terms of media attention. He was extremely high profile, major target of law enforcement. If my dad was around at the same time as Gotti, the amount of attention that he got back then would have been compared to Gotti without a doubt.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge.
Wasn't there like a big thing where one of the other, like one of the other heads of the families was like told Gotti to like, he's calling too much attention to himself a little bit, and like, what's the need to show up in, the fur coats and everything? Like, did your dad
Well, my dad was away at that time, but
no, I'm saying, but did you not, let's say, feel the same way about your dad? Like, what's the reason to call this attention?
he wasn't that way, my dad.
Just didn't give. Yeah.
Just happened naturally.
My dad was the opposite of Gotti in that regard. He tried to be low key. They just wouldn't let him. They followed his every move. We had my dad was under investigation from 7, 8, 9 different agencies, and they had a car parked around our house 24/7. So he couldn't escape it back then. Their investigative techniques were different. They were around all the time. My dad low-keyed it, but he couldn't help it. He didn't thumb his nose in their face. He didn't do any of that, but he couldn't escape it. It was just too much.
Growing up like that,
Yeah.
is there an anxiety that you grew up with? You're a 12-year-old kid. Let's say you're playing it with ball in the front. You just have, cop cars and FBI agents and different things just around you at all times. Like, what's that like?
Well, I hated the police.
Yeah.
I hated them because I looked at them as the enemy. They were harassing my dad, who I loved. He was my hero. And so I grew up hating them because they were around all the time. I mean, literally all the time. They'd follow us everywhere we went. They were sitting outside our house.
Just harassing. I would assume in certain ways, as I would interrupt, just harassing you, actually.
It is harassment. There's no question. I mean,
Right.
we had our neighbors were so disgusted with seeing them. I'll never forget, we had one Jewish lady who came out and put the hose on because she was so tired of seeing them sit in front of her house. She put the hose on them in the car.
That's hilarious.
That's very funny.
I mean, that's how annoying they were back then.
Yeah, no.
So I couldn't. There's no way for me not to see it and know what was going on.
You know what's interesting, and I'm sure you could maybe relate to this and talk to this a little bit, is that now obviously there's a clear understanding of the need for law enforcement. Like that is obviously very existent. I mean, at least I'm very pro law enforcement, But you also have the aspect of law enforcement that's still a little bit the same in this regard, that when they want you, right, they will piss you off to a degree and just annoy, like they will harass you. I mean, we see what's going on in the world right now, let's say with Trump, we're seeing what's happening when they decide they want to come after you. All of a sudden, they'll actually,
Listen, we need law enforcement.
Yeah,
There's no question.
I agree
we
with
need
that.
law and order. I totally am for that. I think defunding the police is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of.
Insane.
Stupid. Now, I'm a proponent for law enforcement, no question. We used to tell the FBI agents and everything that were following us, say, listen, we understand you have a job to do. You're on one side, we're on the other. You catch us, great. We keep quiet, we go to jail. Just don't frame us and don't harass our families. That's all we asked. You'll have our respect if you just do your job. Unfortunately, some of them didn't. And, and the local cops the beat cops, they were okay. I mean, they didn't bother you. They did their job. It was really the investigative agencies like the FBI and, certain organized crime divisions of the state. They got out of hand with us. But other than that, look, it's today, you don't even want me to get into what's going on today. I've never seen the level of corruption.
Yeah, no, what's going on now is crazy.
Today. It's absolutely out of control. They don't care.
No.
They do it right in front of you. They're in your face, and they don't care. Different back then. They tried.
I told someone at least if they tried being believable in the Trump situation, they'd be 33 of 34. Like date him on all 34. Like come on, give it up. That was
Listen, I saw a lot on the street, and I've seen a lot of stuff. I've never seen anything as horrific and such a travesty of justice. There was no crime there.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no crime. And what they did to that man, I tell you, I got a lot more respect for him, seeing how he is holding up under all of this. Look, I was indicted 7 times. I had 7 indictments, three racketeering cases, 2 federal, 1 state, and then 4 other indictments. I went to trial 5 times. It's draining. I mean, obviously you do it and whatever, but this guy at the same time is running for president. Since 2016, he's been harassed to no end.
Yeah.
And I got a lot more respect for him now.
I think I was telling someone this, I forgot exactly, but the amount of pressure, really, and I don't care if you love Trump, you hate Trump, the amount of pressure that guy deals with on a daily basis is it's unreal. It's not like
unrelenting.
It's unrelenting. It's unrelenting, and he doesn't.
He handles it.
It's crazy.
He's a man.
Yeah, no, it's really that part is really, really crazy. Anyways, you mentioned, just to jump in, You obviously are most well known for the gas scheme. You were, what were you? I read up somewhere on a thing that you were, what was it 18?
No.
The top most. What was the number? 18 of the top
Oh,
100.
Fortune, yeah.
Yeah.
Number 18 on their list of the wealthiest and the most powerful mob bosses.
That's at 35, before 35.
35.
That's a very, very, and then I converted yesterday. You said there was a point where you were making what, $8 million a week or something?
We were bringing into our operation $10 million a week.
So I Googled now, and this is from the gas, correct?
Mainly from gas,
So
yes.
can you just explain to people watching this, because there's a lot of people, by the way, like if you're into the mob, you know everything. I feel like if you don't, then there's like obviously the middle people, which honestly where I say I am, like I know, I'm not like fluent, like I have friends that are. Then there's a lot of people that are watching this, that watch us all the time. Like we haven't done pods like this before, that don't know anything. So could you just explain the gas scheme specifically?
Very simple. I'll break it down without getting into the mechanics of it. We were selling gas, collecting the taxes, and not paying the tax. So at that time, the tax on every gallon of gasoline was 25 to 30 cents state, local, and 9 cents federal. So you had almost 40 cents a gallon. So we figured out a way how to collect the tax and just not pay the government and get away with it. So
How
we
did the
had
government not
40
pick up?
cents to deal with.
That's unreal. How did the government not pick up on it?
They didn't know what we were doing. They just couldn't figure it out. We had a very sophisticated scheme of doing this. I had 18 Panamanian companies that were licensed to collect the tax on every gallon of gasoline. I had over 350 gas stations we either owned or operated, and we were selling to a lot more. And they just couldn't figure it out. They had no clue.
How long did it take them to?
Almost 8 years.
You ran this for 8 years.
I'd be still doing it if my partner didn't become an informant, and he was the major architect of this.
Wasn't you?
Well, we did it together, but I got to give him the credit. He brought me the idea, and I was able to put the operation together that he needed, and I was able to protect the operation, and I was able to, to really make it work.
And he went and spoke, and he talked?
He got in trouble, on an unrelated matter, and didn't want to face jail time, and I was the target, so he gave it up.
Oh.
So we were doing the math. That $8 million a week nowadays is about $46 million a week. Per year is $2.3 billion.
A lot of money.
I just want to understand what it's like.
What's it like to be making that amount of money illegally? Meaning, like, obviously there's real estate moguls and there's Jeff Bezos out there, and there are people that are making, they're making Elon Musk's, but to be making that amount of money and in a way scamming the system out of $2.3 billion a year, what is that like?
Well, money is money, whatever way you make it. After a while, I mean, listen, I had all the toys. I had my own jet plane. I had a Lear 25. I had a Bell helicopter. I had a couple of boats that I had, big ones. And I had homes in 3 parts of the country. And I owned a lot of real estate at the time. I was buying things up and creating assets. So, but I was young, this started for me at the age of 29. I was making my first couple of $1 million. And, you're just doing it, I'm not thinking of how much money is there. It's just managing the business.
You're not even thinking of the illegality versus the legality of it. Like, you're not
Just
thinking
action.
you're not even thinking like
Well-
smiling at the end of the month, like I'm taking $250 million from this without them even knowing. Like, you're just saying I'm making $250 million and I figured out a way.
You got to understand, I hated the government. And so I'm taking taxes from the government. And what was I doing? Remember, you bought gas at my gas stations, you were paying less. I was giving some of the tax money back to the people because they were paying less for gas at our gas stations than they would anywhere else because we're giving back some of the tax money.
You're able to actually justify it.
Yeah,
Right.
so can't justify it.
Well,
We're
I'm
still
saying no at the
stealing.
time.
But at the
You're-
time, there was like a rationale.
Yeah, but we were like Robin Hood back then because, you're paying tax. All right, we're giving you some back at the pumps. And it was very meaningful. People, nobody hated us for what we were doing except the government.
Right.
Everybody else did,
How far was this operation reaching? You were based out of New York. Where's this 350 gas stations? Everything's in New York?
We were mostly in New York, Jersey. We opened up in Florida, had a big operation in Florida, and mainly the tri-state area and Florida. We had expanded to Texas just before I got in trouble, and we were getting licensed in California also. But when I got in trouble for it, we put a halt on that. But mainly the Northeast. A tremendous amount of gas you're pumping, really.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, to me, I'm going to be honest with you, and I've said this, I say this in church. I have no moral issue right now with taking money from the government. I have no moral issue. They're thieves. They steal our money. They're irresponsible. They got us $34 trillion in debt. And they want us to, they want to take more tax money for us to feed their irresponsible behavior.
It's so funny that you're saying this, because my question I was literally about to ask you was, what do you think about taxes in the government, especially you live in California? This place is, I mean, they're hitting you heavy, right? What is it, 40% probably if you're making over $400 grand a year?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know.
Got 13%, you know, personal income tax here on top of their business tax and everything else.
Right.
So they're taking more money from us to pay for their irresponsible behavior. So, you know, listen, everything that's illegal is not really immoral. Remember that.
Right.
You know, so I don't see it as immoral taking money from the government.
It's an interesting point. I mean, until 1913, or officially built on a capitalistic society.
Until 1913, there was no such thing as federal taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it didn't exist. So.
And listen, you wouldn't mind if their behavior was responsible.
Right.
But, you know, I had a talk yesterday with an economist, and I said, how do you get out from under $34 trillion in debt that's rising every second of the day? And he said, very simply, you don't. So we're headed for some bad times at some point.
You know, it's funny because RFK Jr., I was listening, he did a sit down with Ben Shapiro, and it was actually fascinating because he said there are a few different issues that no one is talking about. Like, you have the hot button issues that Trump and Biden go at. And one of the things is, like, no one is talking about the debt. It was like the debt, and then he was talking also a lot about, you know, the food in the country, like the dangers of, like, the, you know, all of our food is basically contaminated with, you know, he was talking statistics.
Right,
Everything is processed, basically. And it's just like the food is not healthy, and chronic illnesses have gone skyrocketed basically in the last 30 to 40 years. You know, a lot of the diseases that we deal with now on a daily, you know, on a daily basis. Like, he was saying the numbers on diabetes under the age of 40. Like, he was just going down it. It was like fascinating to hear, actually. But this thing, he was talking about the debt. He's like, I don't think people understand, like, this country is done. Like, this is what he said. He's like, in 25 to 30 years, if the dollar is just going to cease to exist. And
like, right. Like, if you think inflation's bad now, and like your money goes nowhere.
So what's
and
the answer?
They don't want to talk about it because nobody has a solution, because there is no solution. That's the problem.
But there has to be a solution, because otherwise we're fucked.
I think the solution is going to be some kind of heavy crash at some point in time. There's no way to get out from under that kind of debt. There's just no way. You know, we have a government that's out of control numbers-wise.
Yeah, we're the largest agency in the world.
All of these agencies, I mean, and they grow the government every year. They don't shrink it. So what does the government produce? Nothing.
It's unbelievable.
They don't produce anything.
Yeah.
They're service. That's it. So, you know, when you have a non-producing entity that you're just paying, you're getting nothing out of it.
It's literally just like a boulder. It's just like a boulder on your back. It's just like nothing. There's nothing there.
So that's why I say morally, I have no problem. Now, I won't do it. The reason I won't do it, I'm not going to jeopardize my family. I don't want them to come after me and put me back in jail. Maybe if I was single and I didn't have to worry about that, I'd still be in the gas business.
Right. No, we were talking about this, and obviously California and New York are the two biggest because they're the most obvious liberal states when it comes to this. When it comes to taxes, they had a congestion toll that now that they're putting into place. Right in the middle of Midtown, if you go like below 60th Street, like it's like 15.
I know, I heard.
If it's like if you go below 60th Street between like certain hours, like in order to save traffic,
not certain hours, like most hours.
Most hours in order to save traffic, and then it came out that they said that they're gonna push it off for like a month.
Hochul, the governor,
Kathy Hochul said they're gonna push it off.
Right?
Yes, they have to push it off, but they have to find another revenue source, which is basically them telling you, we're not doing it in order to save you traffic.
Of course.
What we're doing it is to give it money in our pockets.
But the fact that they said it outright.
The fact that they said it outright, they lied to your face outright and basically told you, we're going to push it off, but we need a different revenue source. Is just absolutely asinine. And then on top of it, if you saw money going back to you, like for example, in your case with the gas, you at least saw the money going back to like the people around you, right? Because they're saving money on gas. In New York, in California, you don't see the money going back to you. It's not like, you see your oceans are beautiful. You see that this is happening. You see that your streets are clean. It's like everything going to shit and everything's more expensive.
I said it's like we just pay more and more in taxes and nothing changes. It gets worse. So what the hell's happening?
Homelessness, you know, is at an all-time high.
No, we by the way, we did a very good program in New York. I was very proud of the $53 million to the illegals. migrants. I don't know if you saw, it was an awesome program. We gave 53 million or some crazy number.
Freaking illegals.
That the illegal immigrants that came in, they're like housing them, and they got debit cards to be able to purchase food.
What, up to 10 grand or something they can put on a card? It's and they're excuse me, Bentley. They're chasing veterans out of hotels to put migrants in it. It's insanity. What's going on is absolutely insane.
Can I ask a question? Obviously, all my questions, brother, I don't know when I'm fully able to ask and when I'm not. So please
just ask. Don't worry about
it. Do you still have all your money's in cash, I assume, that what you were making?
No, we had...
but I assume
both.
You guys operated heavy on cash. You're making $2.3 billion or whatever, some crazy number at the time. You still have just bags of cash buried places that no one's ever going to know, you're not going to ever touch, but it's just in this place, there's, you don't know.
That's for me to know and other people to find out. Right?
There you go.
No, but we had a lot of cash, obviously, but we also had, a lot of wire transactions, a lot of money that went, out of the country that we had at the time. I had an account with $33 million in it in Austria. And my partner and I, the one that became informant, both had, it was a numbered account. We each had half the number. And we were just putting the 9 cents federal tax, we were just putting it in that account, that the two of us got, our end of it. And at the end of the day, he gave it up because he became an informant and he told the government about it. So I had to give up my half of the number also because I would never have gotten the money. So that was $33 million that they took off of us. Wow. Probably more than that with interest and everything. But so they got a big chunk out of me.
You beat 4 cases, right?
I beat 5.
You beat 5. So they indicted 7 times. Mm-hmm. You beat 5, you said.
I beat 5.
So the other, okay, right. And then it was twice, right? You got out of jail once and then they sent you back. But it was 5, it was originally 4 straight that you beat, in the beginning, before they ended up
I beat 4 state cases pretty quickly, but I was on trial for about a year. Kept going back and forth for about a year. It was either acquitted or dismissed. And then I beat Giuliani on a big federal case, a racketeering case, yeah.
Do you feel this whole racketeer, Giuliani created that rule for you guys, right? That was
he didn't create it, but he was the one that learned how to use it.
But was he using it in the letter of the law, the way it was meant to be used, or did he just make up some BS and use it to almost be cheap to take you guys down because he had no better way?
I think the law was unconstitutional to begin with.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
My opinion.
That's what I wrote. I'm like, was this law constitutional?
No, it was not. It bypassed double jeopardy. It did a lot of things that it shouldn't have been able to do. Very hard to defend and very expensive. They had the forfeiture clauses in there. If you put $1 into a home that you've paid $10 million for, and they have $1 of illegal money, they can confiscate the whole thing. They confiscated your assets before you were convicted. They did it right away, It was definitely unconstitutional, but it stuck and it's not going away. And Giuliani he used it better than anybody else.
Isn't he getting nailed right now by it? Was he part of the whole racketeer? Didn't they come after Trump?
He's indicted too, yeah.
From that?
Yeah.
It's a little bit karma right there.
Too.
Karma right there.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's karma. You know what? I don't like to see anybody get prosecuted illegally or wrongfully because it's not good for the country. You know? And look, why are they going after Giuliani? Because it's part of the Trump derangement syndrome. That's all it is. It's not because he's a bad person, So I'm not happy about what's happening because they're abusing the law.
Yeah. Did you know Giuliani? Did you actually have conversations with him while all this was going on?
No, I didn't. I spoke to him one time in the courtroom when he told me, if I convict you, I'm giving you double what your father got. I'm going to give you 100 years.
He said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
He told me and my lawyer. And I said, bring it on. Let's go. And I beat him. I was acquitted. So fortunately, because my co-defendant, I was a lead defendant. My co-defendants, a couple of them got 30 years. So he would have given me at least 50. I wouldn't be sitting here right now, but I don't have any hard feelings. I actually spoke with him about a year and a half ago on a radio show. We did it together. And he gave me a compliment. He said, Michael, I've been watching you for the past 30 years, and I think your transformation is sincere. So he said some nice things. And then he wrote the foreword to my last book, Mafia Democracy. Yeah.
Wow.
And he wrote a great foreword. He did. I was shocked.
So I asked him something actually a week ago. I said to him, I'm like, I watch all your stuff, and like you are a genuinely like nice guy. Like I'm just gonna say that like I have a lot of respect for you because I've watched your stuff and you're a very soft spoken, like
mild mannered,
like respectful, like human. And I was like, was he always like this? Like 40 years ago, you're making like you're in the mafia, you're in the life of crime, you're in the life. You're dealing with some big bad guys.
Yeah.
Like you're not like, but I almost feel like, was this you always or?
Well, you know, I have to tell you, my dad was a tremendous influence on me, and I learned a lot from him. And he told me as a young kid, he said, you know, Michael, remember this. He said, always be kind to the little people. Be respectful to them. He didn't mean that in a demeaning way. It was just his way of talking. He said, you know, the valet parker, treat him well. You know, give him a smile. Be courteous to him. You know, the attendant in the restroom, you know, treat him nice. The waiter, the waitress. He said, those are the people that make you strong. He said, they're the ones that root for you, that make you strong. He said, the people on top are going to look to cut your legs out from under you. And so I always treated people with respect, you know, until today. You know, I mean, look, I have book lines sometimes with 200 people on a line. I won't leave until I sign every book because I said, listen, if these people can stand online for 2 hours, who am I? I'm going to sit there and sign their books. And I've had that attitude, and that's just who I am. I'm not throwing bouquets at myself. You asked the question. I'm just telling you. Because, you know, this is going to sound crazy, and it's from left field, totally from left field. I don't know why it made an impression on me, but the Shah of Iran, you're too young to remember. Wealthiest guy in the world, right? Wealthiest guy in the world. Well, he dies of cancer, and there was nothing his money could do to help him live.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, you know, we're really fragile as human beings. When we get to think we're really all about something and our legs can get cut out from us, you know, in a second's notice, you know, who really are we? And so it made an impression on me. I know it's kind of weird. I've said that to people, and they said, Michael, of all things.
It's actually a very famous, it's funny, I see you have Proverbs, whatever. And I know you're a newborn Christian, right? Like, you're very, and I love that. I love also you start every video, you know, thanks to God, which is the truth. That's actually the truth. Like we're sitting here and you know, it's wild, especially with what's going on in the world. Like we're comfortable, we're sitting here, like life is good, we have food, we have, you know, so that's incredible. But there's a saying in the Jewish text, the sages, that says exactly this. Maybe I actually want to get it from him. I'm going to get it. It's Al Tirok Yasharish. Basically, it talks about that post-death, it doesn't make a difference how wealthy you are. You know, there's a famous story, whether or not it's true or not, it's like one of the legends. They say it's true, but basically in Jewish law, you'll probably find this very interesting. Jewish law, when you're buried, you're not allowed to be buried with anything. It has to be just your body, no items, no clothing. When they put you in, a lot of times they'll either, if they'll put you in a casket, but there'll be sometimes nothing. And you're not allowed to be buried with anything. And the Rothschilds, back in the day, the wealthiest family in the world, he said in his will, he wrote before he died, he's like, I have one request. I want to be buried with my socks. That's what I want. I want to be buried with my socks. And afterwards, he passes away. They speak to the rabbis. Sorry, can't fulfill the wish. You know, this is the Jewish law. You can't be buried with your socks. A week later, they find the letter that he wrote. It said, I wanted everyone here to know I never wanted to be buried with my socks. I just want you to understand that when you die, you can't even take your socks with you. You have to take nothing. Wow. And this is the wealthiest person in the world at the time, you know, the Rothschild family, which is a crazy powerful story, you know, the idea, like you're saying.
You know, I never found, I think one of the most attractive qualities of people in power, people of substance, is humility.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so attractive when you realize that this person is really someone of significance, but acts just so humble. And, but humility doesn't mean you can't be confident in yourself. Yeah. Confidence is a strong characteristic also. And there's a real difference between confidence and arrogance. We don't like arrogance, but we respect confidence. And so that combination of humility and confidence, I think, is very powerful. And I love when I see that in somebody.
It's like the healthy ego versus the like the bad ego. Like, you know. Yeah.
I just want to get back to actually when we were talking about, again, you got away, you were indicted on 7 cases, 5 cases got away with, but eventually you do get convicted. Mm-hmm. What is that like? what is that initial emotion feeling when you feel like, basically, I feel like Mafia, this is just my perception of it, is like you kind of feel a little bit Teflon to like the people around you in a certain way, just because you're doing things that, you know, other people are not doing, and you're evading, you have the power of a lot of things. What is that like to have that stripped right at that moment?
Let me tell you, my case might have been a little different in that I took a plea. I pled guilty.
Oh, really?
To a case that I think I could have won, because the principal witness against me, my partner who had turned informant, was the principal witness against me in the Giuliani case, and the jury didn't believe him. We destroyed him on the stand. So he was the principal witness in the next case. And I think I could have beat him again because he didn't have solid evidence on me, and he wasn't a good witness. I took a plea because I said, I have such a bullseye on my back. These people are never going to leave me alone. Never. I had an exit plan because I had met my young wife and I wanted to marry her and get away from the life because I knew the life was in trouble with the Racketeering Act, putting people away forever. And I said, it was part of a strategy to me. So taking the plea was not like, oh my God, they got me. It was, okay, I'm implementing this plan. I got to do some prison time. I'm going to give them some money. I'm going to surrender some assets. But in the long run, my freedom is going to be worth it. So that's how I looked at it. It was a strategy for me more than anything else.
So you already knew that you were exiting the life.
Yeah, it was part of the plan. Well, I took the plea as part of the plan. That was the first step.
Wow.
When did that come into your brain that I'm going to exit the life? Like when?
Really because of meeting my wife. You know, look, I saw the life was in trouble because I saw the damage the Racketeering Act was doing. I saw it. And I knew that I was always going to be targeted. I had 14 federal agencies that was, you know, convened just to put me in prison. So, I mean, I knew that they were going to get me. So you can't beat them forever.
Right. There were 14 put together for you.
Yeah, 14 agency task force whose only job was to put me away forever. Fact.
Wow. That's crazy.
I didn't know this until later on. They would convene in the courthouse in Uniondale, Long Island, twice a month and tried to figure out, they had charts and everything, how to get me. It was unbelievable. So you're not going to survive that forever. And I knew when I went down, I'm going down for a long time. I was the youngest guy out of all these guys. I said, they're going to crucify me. So that coupled with, I meet this young girl, I fall in love.
You're like, yeah.
I said, am I going to marry her and then go away for 100 years? What's the sense?
Right.
So I had to start my strategy, and taking the plea was the first part of it.
And obviously there's no one that knew this.
I didn't tell anybody.
Of course, you can't.
I didn't even tell my lawyer. I wouldn't tell him. I just told him, listen, you know, we got leverage. I beat him on the Giuliani case. I just beat their principal witness. Let me take a plea.
And they sentenced you on the plea for what? What was it officially, 10?
10 years.
And but you didn't serve full 10, right?
I did 8. That's maximum time on 10 with good time. I did all of it.
But what did they then convict you for again after that?
It was a Racketeering Act.
The second conviction also?
No. The second time I went in was for a parole violation.
But what was the parole violation if you were already trying to get out?
Oh, it was just
bullshit thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, they tried to get me to cooperate in a big way. You know, my life was in danger. Yes, people were upset at me when I walked away, and it became so public. I never planned to publicize it, but Life magazine writes this big story. I'm getting publicity everywhere. Everybody on the street is worried. Oh, this guy, you know, he's walking away. That means he's a cooperating witness, which I wasn't really.
When they convicted you a second time, just so I understand, people already knew that you were walking away?
No, it was just
so then how did you make it through prison on the second round?
Well, I didn't you got to understand. On the street, I didn't have many enemies. I didn't make enemies. I made a lot of people earn a lot of money, you know, and I spread the wealth. I didn't make enemies. The enemies came when I walked away because, oh, what's this guy doing, you know? But it wasn't that they were upset with me. I was a bad guy on the street and all of that. So what I had to counter is this guy going to testify and put people in jail, or is he not? That's what I was dealing with. And at the end of the day, I never intended to do that. Government put a lot of pressure on me, but I didn't do it.
Everyone's seeing that you're not doing that, basically, would you say that saved your life in a certain way? Because
in the long run, yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is that I would have thought that just leaving is reason for them, you know, to put a hit on you.
It is, and they did put a hit on me. My boss put a hit on me.
And what happened? They couldn't get to you?
They couldn't execute. Listen, you know, one of the horrors of that life, you make a mistake, your best friend walks you into a room, you don't walk out again. So obviously I spent 20 years in that life. I'm aware
What's
of
that
that.
anxiety like?
You know, so I said, hey, I'm moving out to California. I'm away from the life. They're not going to walk me into a room, that's for sure. I know what they're going to do. I was a student of the life. I knew it well. It's one thing to walk somebody in the room. It's another thing to send a hit squad across the country and try to get somebody that is aware. Because, you know, I changed my whole life. I didn't create patterns in my life. I didn't walk my dog every morning at 7 o'clock. I didn't go to the same restaurant every Tuesday. I didn't go to nightclubs anymore. That's a bad place for me. Everybody knows who I am. So I stayed away from all the danger spots. And then after a while, you know, well, this guy's testifying. Well, all these trials are coming up and I don't show up. So maybe he's not testifying, you know, because I never intended to, but the government puts it in their ear. Oh, he's an informant and this and that and that. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, John Gleason, I don't know if you know who he was. He was my prosecutor for a time. He was John Gotti's prosecutor, became a federal judge after the Gotti conviction. And he said that Franzese took us for a ride, you know. He pulled the wool over the government's eyes because I made them believe I'm really out of the life and yeah, I'd love to help you guys, but at the end of the day, I didn't give them anything. And they were very upset. That's why they threw me back in prison a second
Oh, is that what it was?
Absolutely. They'll deny that, but 100%.
What did they? How were they putting pressure on you specifically? Like, what they had other things on you that they were just trying to?
Yeah, you know, you're going to get killed, and you know, it's words all over the street. And I said, you know, let me worry about that.
Yeah, let me handle my business.
Yeah, I said, I appreciate you guys worrying about me and my family, but I can handle that. You know.
And going into the prison time, you spent, I read, 3 years in solitary. Is that true?
Yeah, 29 months. Yeah.
29 months
straight.
Yeah.
By yourself?
29 months, yeah.
Define solitary, that's 23 hours a day?
24.
What do you mean? You didn't get an hour to go outside?
Nope. By policy in the federal system, they're supposed to give you 5 hours of yard time per week. By policy, not by law. But, you know, the guards are lazy. They come to you at 3 o'clock in the morning. Franzese, you want job time? You're sleeping. You know, it's, you know, a little bit too, I like to do it at 2 in the morning, you know, come back, you're teasing with them. Oh, you're refusing, and they mark it down, and then they go away. So maybe you got an hour a week outside.
You were doing 1 hour a week. How big is the cell? 8 by 8 we're talking?
8 by 10.
Whatever, small window, whatever.
Sometimes a window, sometimes not if they moved you.
I'm trying to, I can't even understand.
So there's like a twofold question to me. Firstly, what's that like mentally? And then number two, what's it like going from having the luxuries of life, having the luxuries of being one of the top earning mob bosses in the top earning mob boss in New York City, having the luxuries of everything around you, and then you having absolutely basically just prison pajamas.
Yeah.
Right? What is that like?
Well, it's obviously very humbling, number one. It's very difficult. Solitary is torture. You know, I'm dead set against it for young people. I think it can ruin them emotionally, no question. I saw a lot of bad things go on in there. At night, the lights go out. A lot of guys couldn't handle it. And I don't demean them in any way. It's difficult, you know. But I got through it.
How did you get through that?
How do you get through it?
What are the attributes a person has to have, the skill set a person has to have to get through such a thing?
Well, number one, I was very determined to get back to my wife and kids, and that was my main motivation. And truthfully, Scripture was my Bible that I just read it inside out and upside down. I had my wife send me in tons of books on every faith. I was really studying, you know, to see if I'm going to spend the rest of my life in this cell, because they told me, you're never going home.
Why? How did they have, I'm saying your sentence was your sentence.
Yeah, but they told me they were going to indict me on another RICO case, and they tried.
Oh, they
but
did.
They couldn't, yeah. It fell apart, and so I only got the parole violation, which was 4 years. They gave me the maximum. So it was very difficult, but I was determined to get home, and I got through it. You know, I tried to get a routine in there, just reading, and I had a Sonny Walkman, which gave me, you know, access to the outside world. I'd get newspapers. You get them 5 days late, but you get them, so you can read and stuff like that. And then I lived for my visits and my phone call. That's it.
Your visits were how often?
Not too often when you're in solitary. You know, it depended where they put me, sometimes once a week.
What allowed them to put you in solitary?
They claimed it was administrative detention. Not that I did anything wrong, but they did it for my own protection.
again, back to them worrying about you.
Yeah, they're supposed to only do it, again, by policy 90 days at a time, but then they rewrite it and you get another.
There's no policy to Michael Franzese, basically, at the end of the day when it comes to government.
The policies are all
29 months of solitary confinement is not a believable.
Yeah.
I mean, the way you're describing it, I don't think there's under 0.5% of people that could survive such a thing, in my opinion. That's
well, you listen. People say, "How did you do it?" Well, they didn't give me a choice. You'll be amazed what you can do when you have to do it. When you're put in a position where that's it. It's either this or something worse.
Was there a defining time during solitary? When did you get involved in the Bible and faith and that nature? Did that come before solitary? It
was the first night when a prison guard handed me a Bible. So it started the first night I was in there, which was the worst night.
First night of solitary.
Yeah. If you ask me to differentiate one day from another, I can't. It was one long day. Everything's the same. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. So I can't say, well, on Tuesday I did this, on Wednesday, it's all the same. Nothing. I couldn't even differentiate it because of the food, because I got food poisoning 5 times when I was in the hole. So I stopped eating whatever they would give me, and I just wanted cereal and bananas and cup of soup. So that was my diet. I told them, don't bring me anything else. I'm throwing it in a toilet. Just bring me that. And so I couldn't even differentiate from the food, what different days were.
Did you have influence from the outside, from the inside? Were you able to control anything, or just the solitary made it impossible?
Can't control anything. I had the one thing I asked for, it was very difficult. You couldn't get out to get to a phone. Your phones are everything to communicate with your family. So the cops were really good to me, the COs. They would put the phone in my cell at midnight, and I'd have it all from midnight until 6 in the morning.
Oh, they did give you that?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you probably are friends with all the, I feel like you would have made friends with everyone.
I made friends with the COs because I didn't bother them. They know who I was too, and they treated me okay, most of them. Some of them just, it's all different kinds.
That's unbelievable.
But my poor wife, I kept her up half the night because that's the only time I can get to talk to her.
Right.
So I drove her crazy in that regard. But, that's your contact with the outside world.
It's so...
What was it like, I don't know if we thought about this, but what was it like for your wife going through that time where you're trying to build kind of the beginning of a relationship or in the middle of the relationship, and you're in solitary, you're in prison, what was that like on your guys' relationship?
Well, it was hard. I mean, very hard because, they told her at some point I'd never come out of prison alive. And we had 2 little babies, and she was young. She was 21 when I married her. So, I married her in July. I went to jail in December. So, it was crazy. She's a special woman, and she hung in there, and she knew that I loved her. And, fortunately, she was a very strong Christian, as was her mother, and she had certain principles about her, and we hung in. When I came home, it was an adjustment period, no question. You don't just come back and everything is wonderful immediately. Right. I left a young girl. I came home to a woman.
Right.
Right.
Such a great line.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there was an adjustment on our parts, and we've had our challenges, but we're married 39 years.
Wow. That's fantastic.
I love this. Was your...
that's a testament.
No, that is... Was your mom upset with your dad at a certain point? Was your mom not interested in trying to tell your dad, get out of this, in some way, we've got the family, we need this?
My mom passed away in 2012, and I can only describe her relationship with my father as being ugly.
Really?
Because she blamed him for everything that went wrong, and rightfully so. And, what went wrong? My sister, 27 years old, my baby sister, dies of an overdose of drugs.
Oh.
My brother was a drug addict 25 years. I can't even begin to tell you what he put the family through. And me personally, just trying to keep him alive.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for me and my dad, he'd have been dead a long time ago. I had a 40-year-old sister that died at the age of 40. She was never mentally stable. And my mother without a husband, 33 years. So the family's destroyed. And she blamed my dad, and rightfully so. And, I call Cosa Nostra, I don't like to use the term mafia for some reason. I don't know why. But I call Cosa Nostra an evil life. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not calling the guys evil. I was one of them. And it's the age-old question. I knew a lot of good guys in that life. Well, why do good people do bad things? Age-old question, all right? We're not going to get into that now. But there was a lot of good guys in that life. But the lifestyle is evil because I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been totally devastated, including my own. Not my wife and kids. I've been able to, spare them, but like I just described. So any lifestyle that does that to a family is a bad life. And that's what I preach to people. It's not a good life. You're going to go down. You're going to cause your family heartache. And what do you need it for? It's not like everybody, everybody in that life is wealthy. Absolutely untrue. Out of 115 guys we had in our family, 115, 20 of us were earning. The other 95 scraping every day to try to earn a buck.
Really?
Who had a no-show job? Who got a little gambling operation? Yeah, then nobody's throwing money.
It wasn't like everyone was making money on a high level?
Absolutely not.
And those
Then why do they choose to be part of it then? If they're not getting what are the benefits?
You know what it is? You're a young guy, you live in Brooklyn, you see guys pull up in a nice car, you see them dressed in a good suit, you're looking at John Gotti, the power, wow. It's attractive to young people.
Right.
You know how many times I talk to young guys, gangbangers, I go into prisons. Oh, come on, Michael, you had it all. We saw the movie Goodfellas. You were mentioned in there, and, you guys had money, you had power, look. I said, I understand that, but did you not watch the end of the movie? You didn't see the end, huh? Who got killed, who lost their family, who went to jail? They don't even look at that. They only look at, they got stars in their eyes.
Yeah.
So think about it. Listen, some kid going to, brought up in a suburban neighborhood, they're not looking to become mobsters. But you come out of Brooklyn, you come out of Queens, you come out of Chicago, you're around those guys, you're from the streets. It's attractive. That's what it is.
Right. It's like a way to get out of in a certain way, it's like a way to, it's like a quick, I feel like in their brain, it's like a quick cash scheme. It's like.
They don't know.
But they don't know that it's really not.
You have a certain idea in your head of what it is when it's not really that.
It's really not.
It's not that.
Right.
And
are those for very few people, maybe.
Now, those 95 that aren't making it, that are not earning, right? They're made men as well, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, do they have the same anxiety as the other 20 that are earning in terms of if they don't do something right, if they don't do this, they don't do that, they're going to get hit.
Absolutely.
So they don't even have the upside of what you guys have while having the same downside.
You got to play by the rules, no matter who you are. Like I said, if you're earning money, they want to preserve you. If they don't want to take it from you, they want to preserve you because you're bringing money into the family. I mean, look, I brought a lot of money into the family, so they watched out for that. But it's not what people think it is.
What was your, obviously Orthodox Jews, that goes without saying, got my yarmulke on. What was your, did you have relationships with we could say Jews at large, but your attorneys and everything you already mentioned there. But did you have relationships and dealings with Orthodox Jews, in your time? In The Sopranos, they mentioned actually, whatever, there's an episode there. So not that has any.
Not Orthodox Jews, but two of the closest people around me were Jewish.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's that?
A guy by the name of Artie Entrada, called him Artie the Animal, a real tough guy. He was very close with my dad, and he was kind of like a second dad to me when my father went away. A guy by the name of Jerry Zimmerman, who was one of my right-hand guys.
Yeah.
Sounds.
That's a real Jewish one.
Very close with Jerry. They're both passed away now. They were kind of street guys. Artie was, a matter of fact, it was one of the most devastating times in my life because Artie was brutally murdered, and I was young when it happened. And I'll never forget, bro, I walked into the funeral parlor, and I was very close with the family. Like I said, Seder dinner, we were just very close.
You would eat the Seder dinner by him?
Every year, without fail.
Wow.
And he took me under his wing, and I walked into the funeral parlor, I'll never forget, and his sister, who loved me and I loved her, she came up to me, she hugged me, she was crying, and she brings me over to the coffin, and she said, look what those animals, I'll never forget, did to my brother. And it was a closed coffin.
Yeah.
And she opened it up, and I almost fainted because I loved the guy, and he was unrecognizable. And it was really, it hit me hard. I wasn't made yet. I was just a recruit at that time. It hit me hard. I'll never forget. And it was a sad day, and because he had a young son, and a daughter, and it was just terrible. His wife had lupus disease, you know, so it was just
What was the
terrible.
reason that was put on him?
You know, it was politics in that life. It was wrong. There's no question about it. You know, the bad thing is some people die for the wrong reasons. It's not justified. In his case, absolutely the wrong reason.
Right.
It was terrible, you know.
That's great. It's a whole different world.
Whole different world.
You can't even.
It's a different society. It's like you're living in a
subculture.
Subculture.
All right, everybody. Want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Ice Shaker Incorporated. For those of you that have been following Mislabeled, you know that we had Chris Gronkowski on. This is his company. They were on Shark Tank, offered a deal by all 5 sharks. They have sold over 1 million bottles to date. Kitchen grade stainless steel, which does not absorb odor like all plastic bottles do. If you are a workout junkie, this product is for you. Third-party tested, will hold ice for 30 plus hours and keep your drink cold. Additionally, this is customizable for all employers for their employees and can make for a great gift for a friend. Turnaround time on custom bottles is 3 to 5 business days. To reach out to them, you can hit them via email, info@iceshaker.com. That's info at ICESHAKER.com. Or reach them by phone, 817-329-6478. Again, that's 817-329-6478. A customer rep will direct you to the correct sales department. Now back to our episode. I've heard you say that you don't believe the Mafia could, the life could exist today with social media and all that stuff, and or much more difficult.
Today in the New York Post, they locked up 17 Genovese guys, I think, or Gambino, I don't remember. Gambling stuff. That the government is doing legally. Why do they lock you up for gambling? Because you're not paying taxes on it.
Right.
They'll let guys rob you in the street and kill you in the subways and all of that, but don't be in the gambling business because you're not paying your taxes. They'll come after you big time. It's ridiculous. And now they do it legally. So it's not a moral thing with them. They don't care if you're a gambling addict as long as you're gambling with them and paying your tax.
Yes.
It's such hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? But I don't know.
No, you were just, it's specifically.
Oh, can it exist the same today?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's there. It's not going away in my lifetime. They've gotten a little smarter. They're going undercover. You guys don't remember, but when I was in that life, New York Post, New York Times, Daily News, Newsday, Long Island Press, you had the 5 newspapers. A day didn't go by when there wasn't a story about the mob in one of those papers or all of those papers.
It's unbelievable.
Every single day. Now, like this one here, I think 6 months ago was the last time I read something about it.
Right.
It's not what it was.
And sorry if this question sounds juvenile, but for a lot of people watching this, again, like they're novices, they don't know much about the life. Their way of knowing about the life is movie, cinema. How accurate is Goodfellas, The Godfather, these movies? How accurate are they to the actual life that's actually happening?
I've watched a lot of you talk about. He has. You can watch. You do Movie Mondays. What's it called again?
Movie Mondays.
Mob Movie Mondays. I guess
I haven't done it in a while because we're running out of movies, but I'll get back to it. People are asking. We're going to do Mean Streets, I think, next. But because it's an anniversary of Mean Streets, I think Scorsese and De Niro are going to be someplace to get some award. But whatever. Goodfellas fairly accurate. They always take dramatic liberty, but the context is accurate, in a way. Donnie Brasco, pretty accurate. I thought that was Pacino's best role.
Yeah, I thought Donnie Brasco was awesome.
Yeah, Pacino was brilliant.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp, of course, was great. Pretty accurate. Casino, pretty accurate. Bronx Tale, thought it was Chaz's greatest role. Pretty accurate. When I say accurate, the sense of it that you've got, the authenticity that you got was great. To me, the number one most authentic mob movie, was the 1996 Gotti movie with Armand Assante and Anthony Quinn. Brilliantly acted, very accurate because they took it off of the surveillance tapes of Gotti at the time.
Wow.
It was my number one as far as authenticity, and acting was just amazing. There was a part in there when Anthony Quinn was talking to Gotti, Armand Assante, that gave me the chills. It was that spot on. And that doesn't happen with me, but that was that spot on. It was a brilliant movie. You can watch it on YouTube.
I'm going to watch it. It's funny because Donnie Brasco, I feel like is very overlooked. I love that movie.
Great movie.
But I feel like compared to like all the other ones, it's like, it's kind of, also obviously it goes without saying for still Sopranos is like, I mean, what's your take on Sopranos? I've heard you talk a little bit about it. That happens to me.
The Sopranos, what I liked about the show was the family dynamic. The mob stuff, a lot of it was silly, in my opinion, the business of the way they conducted themselves. But the family dynamic was what made that show. His relationship with his wife and his kids and his uncle and his mother. I mean, come on, insanity. But, some people think mob guys don't have a family and don't have family life and stuff. We do. We did. We went through a lot of stuff. Maybe it's a little bit more intense because of the lifestyle we lead, but that's what did it for me. But after the first season, I kind of lost interest in it. I watched it more because I was doing Mob Movie Mondays and doing certain episodes. But look, you got to give it its kudos. That was a groundbreaking series that set the tone for all the other great series that followed.
Yeah, also, I think for you, watching that is very different than
the
rest of the world.
Right.
Because I'm watching, I'm like, this. I thought that was an amazing show. You're like, this is half, this is BS.
Well, to me, it's all about authenticity. If it's not authentic to me, I can't watch it.
Makes sense. Most people don't know what is authentic or not, so it's a tough. I watched Sammy the Bull. I mean, you obviously with Patrick, but David, you had all, but he talked about one time he had mentioned like a relationship with Trump, in the 70s and 80s, or really he was saying how Trump was smart, like they couldn't get to him effectively. Like, will you have any relationship with him? Is that accurate in your opinion?
I met Donald once with Roy Cohn.
Oh.
I met him in a club, a private club, because I had dealings with Roy, and Roy was his attorney, not his only attorney, but was his attorney. Trump was not mobbed up in any way, shape, or form. It's
Really?
nonsense. No. Trump was a contractor in New York, in Manhattan, and just like Gutterman and just like, all the major developers, they had to deal with the unions, and we control the unions, period. So doesn't mean you were mobbed up. You wanted to build a building, you had to work with us.
But I would think just based on, Trump's personality and his aggressiveness to get something done, right? When he wants to achieve something,
also,
that he'll pull the levers and the strings he needs to pull. And if he has to go push the boundaries, he would go do that. Like Roy Cohn was, a big time hard hitter, right?
Yeah. Well, so did other developers if they had to do it. But look at Donald's personality. He's not a guy that's going to be controlled by anybody.
Right?
So,
no,
So he would keep his distance from it
on purpose. Yeah,
that's just who he is. He's not going to be controlled by anyone. So, but like I said, Helmsley, we dealt with them because you're going to build a building. You're going to deal with the unions. You had no choice. So maybe you paid off. Maybe you did this. Maybe you did that. But they all did it.
Right. You're saying there's a difference between being involved and doing that.
Yeah, he wasn't even an associate. Trump had no relationship.
That I get. No, yeah.
Going back a little bit to, you made a distinction between the illegality and immorality, right? So we have a question written down that's basically, how does the mafia view people that were breaking the law or doing things and evading it, but different than the mafia was doing it? So you had guys like Jeffrey Epstein and things of that nature. Harvey Weinstein, different. Like, what was the mafia's opinion and the mob's opinion on that? That on other people doing other things that wasn't necessarily what you guys were doing, because
my opinion, Jeffrey Epstein would have either been killed or shaken down by us. Probably shook him down first and then kill him.
Why?
Because he was abusing young girls.
So, but let's say he wasn't involved in the life.
Well, he couldn't have been involved in the life and did what he did.
Right, but I'm saying you guys would have just taken care of business.
Probably would have shaken him down first, money, and then killed him afterwards.
But you would do that to, so to speak, anyone that was involved in that type of thing? If it's a
random
person?
We didn't go searching for these people, but I'm saying if we had any kind of dealing with him or we knew about him or whatever, or God forbid, he bothered anybody that we knew or our families or anything else, forget it.
Yeah.
Same with Weinstein. We wouldn't have had any respect for him whatsoever. You don't abuse women.
Right.
Listen, in our life, you abuse another man's wife, daughter, sister, mother, you die for that.
Right.
Dead. That's it. There's no
coming back from that.
No coming back from that. That's like rule number one.
Yeah, your dad taught you all these things. You have tremendous respect for your dad, but at the same time, You obviously have a very conflicted, I'm sure,
I was very
confusing,
upset with my dad.
complex. Like you also mentioned once that your dad did not push back against the hit that was put on you.
He didn't.
He didn't. How do you juxtapose, so to speak, and like deal with both of those things? He's taught you a lot in the fundamentals of life. Always be good to the waiter. Always be good to the little guy, right? And like all these just principled, great aspects of life. But then he's also involved in crime and all this stuff, you know. Didn't take your side in that. Like, how do you live with both? Like, how do you see it?
Well, listen, you know, it's understanding my father's mentality. You know, to him, my dad was narcissistic to a degree. What mattered to him more than anything else was his legend in that life, his legacy. He wanted to be known as one of the guys who would never talk to the government. I got into it with my father after his third violation. My father was violated 5 times on parole. He was out 5 times, violated, went back 5 times. After his third violation, I went to him, I said, Dad, you can't make it here in New York. The family's being destroyed. We need to move out. Get out of the city. I had plenty of money. You want to go to Florida, you want to go to California, wherever. We have to preserve the family. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. So what happened? He goes back again. So my dad my dad loved his family. I don't want to misunderstand that. But he loved his legacy more. So he sacrificed the family in a way. And I had a problem with that with him because I said, Dad, he said, none of this is my fault. I said, our family's destroyed. It's not my fault. What do you mean it's not your fault? I was framed. I said, I understand you were framed, and I believe that. I'll take it to my grave. But you weren't framed because you were a doctor, a lawyer, or a priest.
Right.
You're framed because we're criminals. We know they're going to come after us. So at some point in time, you got to say, okay, this isn't working. Let me worry about the family. But he couldn't do it. And he got upset with me when I said that. Because I think inwardly it really bothered him, but he didn't want to express that. So how did I deal with that? I knew my father loved me. I understood him. I forgave him for it. But things changed between us. Honestly, I still loved him until the day he passed. I love him now. But things changed a bit. And, you know, people knock, well, you didn't go for your father's funeral. I didn't go to my father's funeral because I was told not to, because it was going to be maybe a spectacle there. And I'm not going there to take away anything from my dad. I went to visit him privately. I've done that more than once. But I'm not there to make a show of anything or to cause trouble, or God forbid somebody wants to be a hero and I got to get into a conflict with somebody. That's not what a funeral is about, or a wake, I should say. So, but, you know, I love my dad. And to me, it bothers me when people try to get into my personal relationship with my dad, because they don't know. My dad and I had so many discussions between us, and they don't really know what went on. And I don't feel it's necessary for me to talk. It's nobody's
and also
business.
people can't really understand the
So
life
complex.
that you lived. Because again, how many people, you said there's 750 people at that time that are living that life amongst millions and millions of people. It's like, no one can understand it anyways.
No, they don't get it, you know, and you get, you know, with social media now, you get so many people that, you know, make comments and everything, but they're ignorant. They don't get it. They don't know. They look at the media. They listen to other people. They don't know what's really going on, you know, but that's social media. Listen, you sign up for it. You gotta have thick skin. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, social media is, I mean,
you know how it is. You're on
since
it.
the downfall of the war, I think it's so.
Let me tell you something. This is the truth. I've had a lot of success on social media. If somebody said to me tomorrow, we're stopping all of social media, I would vote for it.
In the world.
Stop it.
I agree. I would also.
End it.
I would.
End it.
Yeah, you're saying once it's
terrible.
there, you'll utilize it, but, right.
Because it's everything that's good gets abused at some point.
Right.
Social media is damaging to a lot of people, a lot of things, a lot of young people, you know, but it is what it is, and it's not going away.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of also like just misinformation, you know, is just, you know, is just crazy. But I hear you. Okay, so there's so much, I mean, there's so much, obviously.
There's obviously so much to
You
unpack,
can go
but we
for-
know that
for-
you're on.
Yeah, I know you're on a little bit of a time. I guess, you know, the only other question I would really ask, 2 other questions. First of all, JFK. A lot of, you know, talk of the mafia being, you know,
around that,
behind that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, listen, my entire life, from the right people, have told me this was facilitated by our people, mob hit. if you asked me to swear to it, if I had to take a lie detector test, I would tell you that's what I believe and it would come out true. Because that's all I heard from everybody in the know. People in that life, we don't like to admit to things like that. So it's not like people are bragging about it. But, you know,
Why don't you like to admit?
You don't want to admit to you murdered somebody. That's not, you don't do that. You usually keep quiet about it.
No, obviously, but I'm saying between each other.
You don't talk about it, you know? It's just, no. But I've heard that all my life, from the time he was killed. I've heard it from my dad. I've heard it from people in power that I knew well. We discussed. It's on tape. Guy from Chicago saying we killed the wrong brother. Jack Ruby, he was associate of Al Capone, come out of Chicago. He was a mobster.
Right.
That's who he was. He was assigned to kill Oswald. And the whole thing was, you could look it up, when Kennedy and Nixon were in the race, very tight, Joe Kennedy came to us and said, when I say us, my former associates, you got to deliver the state of Illinois for us. And they worked their asses off, and they delivered Illinois, and he wins by a razor-thin margin. Why did they do that? We were supposed to have access to the White House. And furthermore, they were going to leave us alone. Well, what happened?
Right.
Robert Kennedy went even stronger on the mob. He didn't care what his brother and his father. It wasn't John Kennedy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Joe Kennedy. It was Robert Kennedy. And they couldn't control him.
Right.
And this is what happened. Now, you could take that to the bank. I'm confident enough to say there's no question. I believe this too. Trump said if he becomes president, he's going to release the classified documents. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, he was going to release them last term.
He didn't do
it.
He
stopped.
Yeah.
I believe if they're honest, those classified documents are going to tell you what I'm telling you now, and the government does not want the world to know that a sitting president was able to be assassinated by the mob.
Right.
And they keep covering up. Because every 25 years, they're supposed to release that stuff. They keep putting a hold on
The government wants to make sure they know, that people know
They
that
don't
they
want
have
people
the
to
most
know
power.
it. It's a slap in the face to CIA, Secret Service, everybody.
Wow.
And listen, the CIA, you know, they came to us 3 times. 3 times. They came to Luciano in the war effort, okay, when they needed the troops to come into Sicily, and he opened it up for them. That's one. They came to us for the Kennedy assassination, and they came to us when they wanted to assassinate Fidel Castro.
Right.
They had the whole plot. They were going to poison him. Didn't work, but they definitely came to us. They'll do whatever they got to do with whoever they got to do.
Right. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
At the end of the day, do you have any regrets about going into the life?
Going into the life? Sure,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I saw, you know, people die that shouldn't have died, in my opinion. I know it was a bad life. I think I hurt my family by being part of it. So, yeah, I have regrets in that regard. Would I do it again? Yes, because I did it to help my dad.
Right.
I can't say, you know, I did it to become a mobster. I didn't care about that. I honestly didn't. But when I got into the life, I said, okay, I'm in it. I'm going to be the best possible mob guy I can be, and I'm going to take advantage of the life. But I didn't get in it to be a mobster. I got in it to help my father 1,000%.
Got it.
One last thing. So, is there anyone who's like your closest confidants in the life? Like Joe? I'm saying like when you were in Cosa
Who's my
Nostra.
closest confidant? Well, my dad.
I mean, outside of your dad, I'm saying I assume you develop relationships with people, right? Out of the 750 made men between all the families.
I had good friends, you know, in that life. My closest confidants were my crew. And my crew were not made guys. They were my associates.
How many were there underneath you?
I had about 15 very close guys, pretty close guys. I had a lot of guys working under me in the gas business, but, you know, we had a lot of, maybe 15 that were really tight.
Got it. And how long did it take you to stop looking over your shoulder at the end of the day? I assume, you know.
Never.
Still not.
Do you still look over your shoulder?
I don't live in fear, but neither do I take anything for granted. You know, like I don't go to New York and say, hey guys, I'm moving back into the neighborhood. You know, I wouldn't last very long, only because I'd be rubbing my nose in their face, and I'm a guy that left the life, so I'm challenging them. Why would I do that? You know, but no, I mean, my wife gets mad at me sometimes. She says, you know, you should be a little bit more careful. I said, why? You know, I'm 73 now. What do I got to worry about? You know, I just never lived in fear. I honestly did not. When I was in the life, I lived fearful of violating policy that would put me in trouble. So I played by the rules, because there is an amount of fear that keeps you in line.
Right.
Because you know the boss of your family has the power of life and death over you. Boss says you're gone, you're gone. So you got to play by the rules. You got to stay on the right side. You know, remember this. You know, never, you always got to keep the master at a certain level. You know?
You obviously, you talked about once, I haven't heard it in a minute, but you were walked into a room and you thought that this was it.
Yeah.
What was the reason that you thought that you weren't walking out of there necessarily?
Trying to keep me in line. You know,
becoming too powerful.
There was stories out there that I was, you know, becoming pretty strong, and I think they were just trying to send a message to me, bottom line, but I didn't know that, you know. I was scared that night. That night I was scared, no doubt.
You thought there was that was a real possibility?
Could have happened, yeah.
Wow.
What's that level of fear?
It was real. And people said to me, you know, because I had to walk from the car to a basement apartment, house, I should say. And people said, why didn't you cut and run? Could have. I said, it wasn't heroic, it was robotic. I just said, oh, if this is it, this is it. You know, but I was scared. I mean, my heart was beating out of my chest. I'll never forget when the door opened. You know, I walked down the steps, the door opened. I almost fainted, I think, you know, because I knew the setup. Somebody would be standing there, it would be boom, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But so it was very frightening, no doubt about it. But, you know, it also taught me that when I walked away from the life, that I could face death, because I faced it once.
Wow.
Scared or not, you still faced it.
Right.
So I said, you know, okay, I can deal with this. But, you know, I don't live in fear. Listen, I have as much exposure. I'm a public figure. I'm out there all the time. Obviously, we have security when we go places, but I'm sitting at a book table. Someone can come up and pop me in the head. Who knows, you know?
Right.
You can't live in fear your whole life.
But you also say that because of the way that you operated and the loyalty that you operated with and that you never made enemies, that there's a certain aspect where I would say probably you don't live in fear, probably from a factor of you understand that no one's really coming after you in a certain sense because they don't have a vendetta against you.
No, I didn't.
Right?
I didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
Like, go out and hurt, and I'm going to hurt.
So as long
this
as you
person.
kind of stay out of the spotlight.
Yes. I'll tell you what my biggest problem. There was a lot of resentment because I was one of the younger guys doing extremely well. The older guys, normal in life. You know, normal in business everywhere. An older guy or a younger guy comes in, he's got a better position than me. You know, it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit more
Jealousy,
intense on the street. So I had to deal with that. But I came to realize two things, you know. What's the best way to defeat your enemies? Make them your friends.
Right.
Right.
Somehow make them your friends.
Right.
And what's the other? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies close.
Right.
Okay, so it may not be a genuine friendship, but at least you're keeping things calm. You know?
And you talking about, sorry to cut.
No, it's fine. No.
You talking about, and you talk about how life is evil and that it's not a good life and all that stuff. Do you think that in itself creates some sort of like resentment and vendetta, like would be on the streets of like the mafia today? Like if there are people that are still around that like would be like, you know, why is Michael talking like this about our life that we so, you know, desperately, you know,
try to hold close.
Try to like hold close and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that I'm sure ridicule me for doing what I'm doing, but not to a point where they're going to come after me. I mean, if you notice, I don't mention people in the life currently.
Right.
I'm not looking to put anybody on blast, so to speak. I don't do that. You know, I tell stories about my experience with the life, people I might have been involved with. Most all of them are dead, not by, I can't help it. I've just outlived all of them. They're all gone, unfortunately. You know, you talk about that Fortune magazine where they named me number 18. Well, 48 of them are dead.
Oh.
And number 49 is in jail. I'm the only one alive and free.
That's unbelievable.
So I can't help that.
You walked away from the life, but you've chosen to stay attached to it in a way that like you're doing this podcast with us graciously, talking about it for an hour, 40 minutes. You have your own podcast. You're talking about, you have Mob Movie Mondays and whatever. Isn't there an aspect where when you walk away from it, you kind of just want to let it go, but you're kind of in a certain mind frame, like you kind of stay in it because you're talking about it every day. And like is there a part of you that kind of just wants to just like.
It's a great point. Let me tell you, when I first came out of prison, I started speaking. I never realized how intriguing the life is to people outside of the life, all over the world. I'm telling you, I go to Singapore and I do 1,800 people. I do my thing, talk about the life, whatever. And my host tells me, listen, we promised a Q&A, but Singaporeans, they're very respectful. They don't ask a lot of questions. We're going to put a shill in there. His exact words. We'll ask a few questions so we keep our commitment. I said, great, we'll go home early. I was there for 2 hours. I couldn't believe every movie they knew about. You name it.
Yeah.
Jimmy Hoffa questions in Singapore.
I didn't even bother getting into Jimmy Hoffa because I didn't want to sit there for...
In Singapore, okay? So I'm saying, wow. So yes, I laid the foundation. It opened the door for me. I speak in churches. In the Midwest, when I first came out, nobody really knew who I was. You know, the mob guy. They'd put it on a billboard, standing room only. Everywhere I went, I said, okay. So that's the platform I've been given. Now, I started my YouTube channel telling mob stories. Truthfully, I'm sick of it. I don't want to tell any more mob stories. I do not. And I've been getting out of that lately. But, you know, my audience was used to a certain thing, and now I'm pulling away. I'm not going to make things up.
Right, of course.
You know? And like this, I just told you, there's a thing in the news about the guys that got arrested today, Genovese guy, I think Genovese guys. I'll talk about that to satisfy my audience because they want to hear that from me, from my perspective. But I've moved on. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Right.
What are you moving on to?
You know, what is your next chapter of life? What would you like to see?
Look, I am deeply concerned with the future of our country. I have 7 kids and 7 grandchildren. Our country is in very bad shape. This world is in very bad shape. It's in chaos. And listen, I hate to think of Donald Trump as a savior because I don't like that. There's no man is a savior. But we need a change of administration. We are in very bad shape in this country. So I have a platform. All I want people to know is the truth. And on November 5th, we have to make a change. Oh, I don't know what this country is going to look like 4 years from now. I have no horse in this race. I have no relationship with Donald Trump whatsoever. None. I don't invite him to dinner. I have no relationship with him. But he's our alternative now. We have 4 years of a record for him to look at. The country was in pretty good shape when he was there. I don't care what he did in a hotel room in 2006. It might be distasteful to me, but it had nothing to do with his presidency.
Yeah.
So I want somebody in there that's going to straighten the country out. And that's him right now. So I feel I have a platform to make people aware. I have some credibility. I have some knowledge. I have experience with this system. I can talk about it day in and day out. I've lived it my entire life. So I want to make people understand what's going on. And you got to make a change, people.
I'm trying to help. I tried helping them that way.
Exactly. Exactly. Listen, one thing that bothers me, these politicians get up and they lie to us on a daily basis. And I'll tell people, guys are pathological liar. Well, it's politics. I said, it's not politics, it's lying. Right. What are you talking about? It's lying. A lie is a lie is a lie. I don't care what organization, or it's a lie. And the serious thing about this lie is hurting you and your family and our country. So you have to get rid of it. Don't think that, it's politics as usual. It may be as usual, but that's what we have to stop. So I feel I have a voice. It's not only that. Look, I want to lighten things up too. I want people to have some enjoyment. Look, in my speaking engagements, we get people laughing and happy and answering questions. I'm very serious about what I'm doing. I did a Rumble live this morning, and I have a tendency to get worked up over it.
I love it. It's passionate. It's
something that it's in your kishkas.
But I want to do a combination of both. I have some people lined up that were part of the Hells Angels. One undercover agent that infiltrated the Hells Angels. Interesting stuff. People want to hear that. I don't mind talking about that.
Your stuff is fascinating to me. Like what you said before about people outside of the life wanting to know more about it. I mean, I'm glued. I can watch and watch and watch. I was even watching, you had a whole thing on the Jewish Mafia when they took out the Nazis.
Yes.
I'm saying when you get, and you have a great delivery, fantastic deliveries, truly. Okay, I know we're running out of time, so I just want to ask one question. We ask this final question to every single guest. I wanted to talk to you about the Yankees and first of all, yes or no, that between me and you,
Yankees?
You guys fixed the Yankee games?
Fix the Yankee games?
What was the loan sharking?
Wasn't there loan sharking going on with the Yankees players?
The Yankee games were not fixed.
Not Yankee games are fixed, but the Yankee players were betting or things of that nature. There was loan sharking going on.
I will never throw the Yankees under the bus, no matter what. I am a Yankee fan from Mickey Mantle, the time I was 5 years old. I love the Yankees.
Okay, the Wikipedia page is off.
They blew that up. Look.
No, it's there. I read articles.
Were players gambling? Yes, they were. No question about it. Were games being fixed? And no, they weren't being fixed. Were players gambling with us? 100%.
Got it. Okay.
100%.
That's the answer. Final question. We ask this to every single guest. This is a great question for you. In what way, at the end of the day, do you feel mislabeled? Do you feel mislabeled? Do you feel misunderstood?
Mislabeled, misunderstood. Like that's the whole point of our podcast is like that idea.
You know,
getting to really know the person.
I think the misunderstanding comes with a lot with my personal relationship with my dad. And there's haters out there that hate you just for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's nothing, we don't know each other personally. And that's misunderstood. And I think there's misunderstanding about the life and my relationship in that life at times. And the reason for that, quite honestly, is because there's other YouTubers out there that come after you because it gets them views. And so they say things to be controversial and they start stuff out there and all of a sudden it grows. So that's a misunderstanding, I think, that's a little bit troublesome. Like I say, you got to have thick skin if you're on social media. Yeah. I get that. Other than that, I think I'm pretty well understood by people outside of the social media world. And obviously I have a big following, so most people do understand who I am. But I think if you're asking what bothers me about things, I think it's that. I don't like when people get personal when they don't know your relationships within your family.
Yeah.
And that's troublesome. But you got to deal with it.
Totally there. Michael, I just want to say
thank you so much. Opening your home,
unbelievable. Thank you to your wife, who's not here, but
this area was not used too many times. This is the first time it's being used.
First time. I'm beyond honored, really. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Going to come at you next week with another incredible episode. Peace and love. Thank you, Michael, one more time.
Thank you.